Hey, welcome to a new day. Today we're going to continue working on the portfolio website, so a website which shows off your work. So yesterday we built this part, what I'm selecting here. Today we're going to add these titles and descriptions and images as well, and you're also going to learn how to create a page with multiple columns. You can see here that the content here on the left is separated from the content here on the right. So that's the web page we're going to build today. And you also see that we will use external files to get the data for these elements, right? Because these are like repetitive information, so it makes sense to extract that information from some files instead of writing that down inside the Python script. So that's what we'll build by the end of the day, and this will be a great opportunity to practice some of the fundamental blocks of Python. So let's move on with the next video. See you there. Hey, welcome back. At this point we have come up with this app. So we have two columns and we have some content here outside of those columns. Now we're going to have to add two more columns. So if we look at that PDF, the sketch we did, which is here, I've added it to my project directory to have it here handy for convenience. And so this is what we're going to add. One app here, 3, 4, and so on. And for each app, we're going to have the title, the description of the app, the image, thumbnail, and also the link to the source code, which is going to be the link to the GitHub repository for each app. We don't have those links currently, so we're just going to have one simple link for every page, the same link. And so these data are stored in data.csv. So we have the title, the description of the app, the URL, and the image file path. For example, we have the to-do app, the portfolio website app, the PDF templates app, and so on. Images are stored in here. And yeah, with that, let's go to main.py, and under this unindented, we will add two columns. So first, let's say call 3 and call 4, create them as objects .st.columns. So this columns method will create two columns. Store each column object in these two variables. And then we say call 3. So what do we put in column 3, which is this one in here? So that here is column 3, and that one there will be column 4. So let's add the title first. Before accessing the title, we need to access the actual data, the complete data from data.csv. And for that, we're going to use pandas. So import pandas. Pandas is a third-party library. It is used to read CSV data. So let me demonstrate to you in the Python console how pandas works. No, pandas has already been installed by Streamlit because it's a dependency of Streamlit. Otherwise, you could go to Python packages, search for pandas, and if you see the install button in here, then you can install it. In my case, it's already installed. I hope it's the case for you too. Then you can import pandas, so like I did, and we can import it in the Python console as well. And then you say you have this variable and you point to pandas.read CSV. So CSV is a function of the pandas third-party library, and this function expects as output the path to the CSV file. In this case, it is data.csv. Data.csv is located in the project directory in my computer, in here. So it should be the case for you as well. So provide it there and press enter. And now df is this. However, the reading was not done correctly here actually, because pandas, actually the read CSV method, doesn't know how to read this data. So what we got is just a bunch of text. It's not formatted correctly. So to format it correctly, press the upper arrow key until you get this expression where we read the CSV data, and then you give another argument. So after a comma, you need another argument for the function. This will be the sep argument is equal to semicolon as a string. You see in double quotes. So I'm giving it a semicolon. So I'm telling the read CSV function that the data are divided, are separated. Sep stands for separator. So these data are separated by a semicolon. If I press enter now, and then I call df again, this time you're gonna see a better structure. So you see we have the title column. So all these belong to that title column. We have other columns as well, but they are not being displayed here because it's too much data. However, you can also view the data frame in here. You can press that view data frame button and PyCharm will show you this. So Python and pandas have parsed this data frame as a table. So all the data are well structured now, and we can access this data using some other functions, which you'll see in just a minute. So that's what we have: the title, the description, the URL, and the image. That's what pandas does. So you could also do this parsing using that with open data.csv method as file, and so you can load this as a string. Let's say you say content is equal to file.read. The content and the content variable will be just a string. So these are not parsed, and you could parse them using Python methods like string methods to split this text and so on, but that would be too much work. It would be like reinventing the wheel. So pandas gives you the data structured in a tabular format, so you can access what data you want. So in this case, we want to access the titles of these data. So basically, we want that column. We want to display all these titles on the web page. To do that, we need to iterate over that data frame, which should be for index row in df. So df is the variable that contains the data frame, the table. And then you say print row, and we only want the title. So the title is the name of that column. So let's execute again. Now we've got an error here. And the problem is that I forgot to add something here. So let me call that again with the upper arrow key. In PyCharm, you can call the previously executed statement. You can go with the upper arrow key above here, right arrow key, go to df and add a method, iter rows. You see with double R, iter rows, that's a method with parentheses. So basically we access now the rows of the data frame. So this method gives access to the rows, and then we iterate over those rows. So now you need to go with your down arrow key to the last dots here and press enter. This time we got the correct results. So these are all the titles. So basically that gives you the title of each row in the data frame: to-do app, portfolio websites, PDF templates, and so on. So with that, we can go to main.py, we import pandas. Before creating columns, we read the data frame using pandas.read CSV, data.csv, another sep argument, which is going to be a semicolon. If this was a comma, you'd have to write a comma here. Although this could be omitted if the data are separated by commas, because by default this sep argument is equal to a comma. But when the data are not separated by commas, you have to explicitly declare the separator here. And then with call 3, you say for index row in df.iterRows. That's a method, a colon, and then I'm going to use a header to write some big text. You can also write the right method, but a reader will write an h1 header. So that would be row title. So in the case of the Python console, we just printed out the titles, but here we write them on the web page. Yeah, I'll make some space here, and let's run the app in the terminal. So that would be streamlit run main.py, that's the name of my file. And the browser should open automatically. Yeah, that's it. So these are all the titles. They are rendered in one single column for now, but we can fix that easily. The way I would fix that is by adding here another column, so call 3, that one. Again, we iterate for index row in df.iterRows, st.header row title. I know you are confused. What I just did is identical with this one, but we can do some small change here. So let me show that to you in the Python console first. We've got the df data frame, which has 20 rows. You can see at the end we get the statistics about this data frame, so it has 20 rows and 4 columns. But if you use a list indexing syntax such as 0 to 10 or just that, which is the shortcut of 0 to 10, if you execute that, you're going to get only the 10 first rows. You can cancel that. So only the first 10 rows we've got in here. And if you want the last 10 rows, you can do 10 like that, and that's what we get. So from 10, 11 up to 19. So that's the indexing of the data frame. It starts from 0. So 0 is the index of the first app, up to 9 for the first 10 apps, and 10 to 19 for the second 10 apps. So therefore we can go to the code here and say df up to 10 and df from 10 up to the end of the data frame. I can save this script, go to the browser, refresh, and yeah, those are the titles, split it into 2 columns. And that's how you work with pandas. So as you can see, this might be looking like a simple website, but it does teach you some very fundamental, advanced actually, Python concepts. Pandas is more into the advanced part of Python, where you work with data. And before we close the video, let's commit the changes. This would be day 22, and what we did is render the titles, the app titles, let's be more explicit, in 2 columns, and commit. And that's it. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey, welcome back. In this video we're going to add a description, an image, and a link to each of these apps. Currently, we only have the titles. So let's go back to our code and let's keep on adding lines inside our for loop. So we extracted the title. Now let's add the description. The description is in the description column. So all we have to do is say st.write. So this will be normal text font. Therefore, we use the write method for that. And in this case, it's going to be the description key. Now, if you do a typo in any of these column names and then you go to the page and reload, you're going to get a key error. So whenever you get that key error, it tells you the key that is not existing in your data frame. So that's a very common error. So please keep that in mind and know that you have made probably most likely a typo in that error. So double check it with your data. Is it description here? Description there? Yes, now it should be fine. Yeah, so there we have the descriptions for the first column, and we do the same. I'm just going to copy that, paste it here, reload. We have the description for the second column. Let's add the images. st.image, that's the method to add an image to the web page. In this case, that would be row, well, image. So image contains the file name. So that is only the file name. Therefore, if you just do row image, you're not going to get the desired results actually. So you see we get no images because our script main.py is located in the root directory, but images are located inside images. Therefore, you need to add images with a slash plus that. So basically what I'm doing here is something like images slash plus, I'm concatenating this string with that string. That string is going to be one.png for the first app. And so what we get is this path. That's the relative path to the first image. And then we're going to have 2.png, so the loop is going to generate these strings automatically. So those will be the relative paths to each image, and those paths are going to create an image together with this method. So they are going to create an image here on the web page. Reload. So there we have images for the second column. And let's add images for the first column as well. So there we go, first column, second column. So those are the first 10 rows, these are the second 10 rows. Let's remove the break lines because there are too many of them. And lastly, let's add a link. The links are in the URL column. Therefore, we do st, and for links we have the write method again. And this will have this special syntax. Instead of writing some simple text, we use this syntax, square brackets and then round parentheses. In the square brackets, you write the text which will be a link, and in the parentheses you write the actual link, https colon / for example python.how.com. Later on you will add the GitHub links to each of the apps. So for now I'm just adding some static text here, and I can also get these links from that. That's what I'm going to do in just a minute, but let me show you the syntax first. So if I go to the web page and I refresh, that's what we get. So that's the text. If I click the text, it's going to take me to that pythonhow.com URL. So source code for that, source code for that. So each of them has a source code. Right. So again, this is a string. You see it's enclosed in double quotes. Now what happens if we want to have this dynamic? So we want to grab that from the data CSV file. we want to get this link for each row. To do that, since this is a string, we can use an f string. So we turn this into an f string, and then this value here, which we want to convert into a dynamic string, then we delete that and we write curly brackets. So note that curly brackets are inside those round parentheses. So in curly brackets now we have this variable, which is going to be row URL. But now, since we have double quotes in the outer edge of the string, here we want to use single quotes. So that's the same syntax as this one in here, you see? So this will be equal to each URL of the apps. And so the curly brackets are part of the f-string syntax, and these square brackets are part of the Streamlit links syntax, and so are the round parentheses. They are also part of the Streamlit syntax. So there's quite a mixture there. So make sure that you're following the syntax exactly as you see in here. With that, I'll go to the web page, refresh, and now the source code links are still there. So each of them now connects to the link which is listed in here for each app. It happens to be the same Python how, but whenever you change that in these data, the web page will change accordingly. Yeah, so let's do that, copy and paste it in here. And that's more or less the page. Now, what if you want to have some space, more space between the columns? How can we do that? Yeah, let me show that to you, how we can do that. So the trick here is to create a third column here in this area. So we have the first column with the first 10 apps. We have an empty column with nothing, with no content, and then we have the third column. So to do that, you want to add a third variable here between these two columns. You can name this empty col, for example, make a comma. So one variable, two variables, three variables, and then here, instead of passing an integer, we pass a list, and in the list we pass three numbers, 1.5, 0.5 and 1.5. So these are the ratio dimensions of these columns, which means that the first column will be 3 times wider than the middle column, and also this column will be the same width with the third column. And that's all you have to do. So since we are not adding anything to empty col, then you don't need to create another with context manager. So with that, you go here, refresh, and you should see more space in between the columns. So if we resize the window, making it smaller, you also see that this content is responsive, which is great for mobile devices. And that's the final code for this video. And yeah, lastly, let's commit the changes. So this is day 22, and what did we do? We added add description, image, and links. So app description, image, and links. Commit. And yeah, that was for this video. So thanks, see you later. Congratulations, you have reached a very important milestone in the course. Today you're going to try to code your first app independently. So you have all my respect for coming this far in the course, and let me tell you what this will consist of. So far I've been showing you how to build real-world programs. So I've been coding on my computer and you've been trying to do what I've done. Now I'll give you the project requirements, how the app looks like, how the app that you should build looks like. So without further ado, let me show you how the app looks like. So this is the app you should be building. This is a company website. Let's say we have company X, its name is the best company, and here we have some text, a description about the company, then we have a header again, so a header, some text, a header, and then we have the team, so the photos of all the team members, and their names. So John Smith for this member of the company, and this is a role for John Smith. I'll give you all these data. So that's the final app, and it also has a contact us form. But for today, all you have to build is this page. So tomorrow you're going to add a second page and that form. But today all you have to build is this page. So that's how it looks like. And that's normally what you see when you get some project requirements. Normally you'll not see the end product, but you'll see some sketch as a developer. So you'll see that sketch and you'll start to build that. So in this case, I'm giving you some sort of sketch. You can see it on video, so you know what you should be building, and I'll give you the data now. So in the lecture resources, you will find these data. So let me explain you what these are. Data.csv is a CSV file. If you open it in PyCharm, you should see something like this. So we have the first name here, a comma, last name, role, image. That's the header of the data. And then we have John Smith. So John is the first name, Smith is the last name, marketing manager corresponds to the role, and 1.png is the photo for John Smith. So then we have images. These are all the photos. So that's a photo for John Smith, and then that's a photo for the second member of the company, which corresponds to that second row in the data. So that would be Alberto Locke. So those data should be rendered on the web page. And then we have this topics.csv file, which is also a CSV file. It has this topic header, job inquiries, project proposal, other. This is a file that you'll need in the next day, so you can ignore this file for now. You can just keep it on your project folder, but you don't need it for today. You only need these two. So what you should do now is you should be creating a PyCharm project, a new project, put those files in that project and create a .py file and start coding this web page. This is just some fake text, so just write something or find something from Google. And in the next video you will see my solution to this first exercise, so how I built this page. But there's only one advice I want to give you in relation to how to create these apps, and that is start from scratch. So I know that my apps are similar to what you built. I know that the portfolio website is very similar to this, but don't copy my code. So don't copy the code from the previous projects and paste it on your PyCharm project. Simply start from scratch. So type in the import statements first, go to the next line, write whatever you need to write. And if you get stuck, of course, you can see my previous projects. You can look at the portfolio website code for reference. But you should always be typing in code because you are learning, so you should be used to the syntax. That's how you learn the language. With that, I thank you, and I'll see you in the next video where I'll give you my solution to this feature, to the web page of this app for today. See you there. Hi, in this video I'll show you my solution to the exercise which I handed you in the previous video. So the exercise was to build this web page. And so let me show you now my project in PyCharm. This is what I have here. I have this directory with images, so that's each image of these members of the company, and you got these files in the previous video. And then I have the data.csv file, that's also a file you got in the lecture resources in the previous video. And then I have this topics.csv. We don't need this right now, we'll need it tomorrow, so we can close that. And that's my main.py file where I wrote the code. So this is what I'll explain you now, what I did. So I imported Streamlit and pandas. I set the page configuration, so I set the layout to white so that we can have the content expand wider than normal. Otherwise, the content would be more narrow. And then I added a header, which corresponds to that. I added this text using a write method. So this is a multi-line string, and it's fine if you just use your enter key to split the line so that they don't get too long on the editor here on PyCharm. So that's a text which corresponds to that text. And finally, that's a subheader, our team, which corresponds to that. So let me place this in here and that page in there, so it's easier for you and me. Next, I prepared these 3 columns because we're going to have 3 columns here on the web page. And then I read the data.csv file. Now here I want to stop and explain this. So I didn't use a sep argument because the sep argument is by default set to a comma. Therefore, I didn't use that because the data are divided by commas. You see? So that's how I read the data. So there I have a pandas data frame object. And then I access the first column. I iterate over the first 4 rows of the data frame. So since we have 12 rows, so that's 12 rows, that's only the header. So the header is not actual data. So since we have 12 rows and 3 columns, that means we're going to access rows 4 by 4. So 12 divided by 3 makes 4. And so I added the subheader. That's the code for that. So I built an f string to construct this name. You see that here's where I access the first name from the first name column, and I applied the title method, which is a string method. So each name of the members will be capitalized. You could also use the capitalized method instead of title. That would also be fine. So we have here the name, a space, and then the last name. So name, a space, and the last name. That's how we use the f string in this case. Then I wrote the role using the write method, so we have this normal text here, and then I rendered an image using that image method. Then we have the second column. The only difference here with the first column is that we iterate over rows 4 to 7, so 8 is not included in the slice. So this is going to give us rows with index 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that is 4 rows. And then we have the third column. Here we access rows 8, 9, 10, 11. So those rows, that means that's the row with index 0, 1, 2, 3. So those are the first 4 rows. Then we have the next 4 rows in here and the last 4 rows. Each of those rows will be rendered in a separate column here on the web page. So that's my final code. You can also find the code attached in the lecture resources. So if you have a problem with your code, you can just copy paste my code on your computer and try to compare the 2 files. So in PyCharm, you can compare 2 files. For example, if I have another main2.py file in here, and let's paste some content in main.py, and if I change this 8 to 9, I can select these 2 files, right click, and go here to compare files or Control D, and this will show you the 2 files side by side, and you'll see this paths. It's pointing you where you have differences, and it highlights that difference, so you know that 8 and 9 are different. I hope that is helpful, and let me delete main.py. And yeah, that's the code. I know for sure that the code was different from yours, but that's nothing to worry about. Between two programmers, never is the code the same for building the same thing. So I hope that building something from scratch on your own has helped you learn the concepts better. I'm sure it does. And I'll see you in the next videos. Thanks a lot. As you already know, whenever you want to code a new Python app, what you do is you start PyCharm and then you go to File, New Project, pick a folder. For example, I've prepared this with PyCharm empty folder. I'll just pick that. Sometimes you may write that folder here and PyCharm will create an empty folder for you. Either way is fine. And then when you press on create, what happens is that PyCharm will produce a virtual environment for us automatically. Then we can create Python files from here, and then we can run those Python files using PyCharm. So everything happens like magic, which is fine. The problem with that is that it's a bit of a black box for beginners. So in this video, what I want to show you is how to create Python apps without using an IDE. So that will help you understand how things works behind the scenes, and that will make you a better programmer. So let's start. This is with PyCharm, this folder that's just got populated with these two folders. The Ven folder, which contains the virtual environment. I've already explained what virtual environments are, but I'll talk about that again in this video. And then in this folder, we also have this .idea folder, which contains configuration files about this PyCharm project. So these are related to the actual PyCharm IDE. Now, I also have this without PyCharm folder in here, which is empty. Now I want to start a new app in this folder. So how do you do that? Well, starting a new app implies that you need three things. So you need to create .py files, you need a text editor to edit those .py files, and third, you need a Python interpreter to run those .py files. When we use an IDE, all that is taken care by the IDE, but now let's see how we can get everything together to be able to code a program. So the first thing you do out of these three is you take care of the Python interpreter. So it's a good idea to create a virtual environment and use the interpreter of that virtual environment instead of using the interpreter you have installed globally in all your operating system. So let's create a virtual environment first. For that, you need to right click over that folder and go to Open in Terminal. On Mac, that could be hidden somewhere under more services, and then there you'll see open new terminal or something like that. So if you do that, now the terminal app here is pointing to this directory. So that's the current directory, and here I can create a virtual environment using the command py-3.11. If you are on Mac or Linux, that should be Python 3.11 without spaces. But you might also want to change the version to something else, whatever you have, 13, 14. So I'm on a Windows currently, so that would be py space -3.11. So please make sure to have the actual version here, 3.11 in my case. Then you have an M flag. The M flag allows you to access Python libraries. Venv is one of the Python libraries, standard Python libraries. So just like we have other Python libraries which we import inside a Python script, this is also a library, but in this case we are using it in another way. So this library now will create a folder named env, or PyCharm likes to call it venv. So as you see here, PyCharm created this venv folder. which you can also see inside this folder, venv, so that's the same directory. And that same folder is what we will create now, but in this other folder. So if you press enter now, what will happen is that inside this folder, a venv folder will be generated. So let's check that. Yeah, here we go, venv. And if you go to the scripts folder on Mac and Linux, that should be named bin. So go to the bin folder on Mac or Linux, scripts on Windows. In here, you should see Python. So that's the interpreter we should use for running the files of this project. So to create files then, there are two ways. You either create the files from the command line, from here, if you prefer, using commands, or you can create the files using the file system. For example, you can right click here, go to new, and go to text document, and write something like main.py. On Mac, you probably need to use the terminal using the command touch main.py, because on Mac it's not easy to create new text files. Now, note that even though we named this file .py on Windows, this still has a .txt extension. So technically this is main.py.txt, but Windows is hiding that .txt extension. To fix that, you want to go here and then go to options. So go to file and folder options, and then you want to go to view, and then you want to uncheck this option, hide extensions for known file types. Apply, OK, and now Windows is revealing the truth here. So it's telling us that this does actually have a txt extension. So rename the file to main.py. Then next you want to start coding. So you might use any editor that you like. So you could use Notepad on Windows, TextEdit on Mac. I'm just speaking in a simple editor here. Then here you can start coding like that. Of course, as you can see, this doesn't have syntax highlighting. So you're coding in the dark, so to say. And this is how things were in the past when modern IDEs didn't exist. So I can save this file. And then to run it, go to the terminal again. If you close it, you should go back in here and open it again. And then to run the file, now you have two options. You can either run it with your main Python interpreter, your global interpreter, or using your virtual environment Python. So of course the second option makes more sense. You should use the Python of your virtual environment. That's better because it keeps this interpreter only for this project. So if you install, for example, libraries, third-party libraries for this particular Python interpreter, then these libraries will be only for this interpreter. They will not be installed for your global Python interpreter. So to run the main.py file using the virtual Python, you do venv / on Mac or Linux. On Windows, that would be a backslash, and then on Windows you'd write scripts. On Mac, that would be bin. On Linux, it would also be bin, and then / again, and then you access Python. So we are accessing from venv and scripts this Python file. And then you point to your main.py file. So make sure, of course, you are inside without PyCharm. Otherwise, this will not work. So we are running that file using that Python interpreter. So execute that and we get hello. That's the output. And that's how you code an app without using an IDE. That's the manual thing of doing coding. So when you execute an app in PyCharm using that triangle button, what we do is we call that particular command. So we start the interpreter, the virtual environment interpreter, and we interpret that file using that interpreter. And we get the output in here. Now, sometimes what happens is that when you open an existing project in PyCharm, any project, sometimes PyCharm may not recognize the virtual environment immediately, and you'll get probably a message here which tells you that you should specify an interpreter. So you might click that interpreter path, the venv path that PyCharm is suggesting you, or you have to go to the settings in here and then go to projects and then go to Python interpreter, and then you might have to add a new interpreter by using this button here, add. And sometimes PyCharm may tell you that, oh, this directory is not empty. So in that case, you should go to this folder in your file system and delete the existing venv folder, which is problematic and it's causing you these messages. And then this message will not show here anymore, so you can press OK to create a new virtual environment if the previous one is having issues. So that was just a tip about PyCharm, and thanks for following this. I'll see you later.